Welcome back to the Backmarkers. What a season it has been. The 2024 F1 season is over. My name is Mike Hurley. I'm joined by Austin Evans. Hi, Austin.
Hello, hello, my friend. What a ridiculous year it has been. It's like,
Weird. A
I
weird
feel
one.
like we went into
Great.
this year expecting Red Bull to absolutely steamroll everyone. In fact, we had that sort of very personal hands-on of being there for the
Yep.
launch of the RB20 this year. And I remember when the car rolled out and I was like, oh, it's over. You had a very, in hindsight, accurate prediction go, they went a different way. Not sure this is going to work. Mike was out here with some
Look at that.
clairvoyant energy.
I I don't feel like I have like really prescient great takes on F1, right? Because I don't have enough history, right? I like to have takes like everyone. And there are many ways in which my take could have been wrong. But what I said was at the time, and I think I said it on the show too, was like it's a bold move to change concept when you were so dominant. And my concern for Red Bull was that they may have set themselves up for a tougher season. I think what actually ended up happening was the loss of Adrian Newey was the actual problem, and that they ended up getting themselves into a situation where the car was pretty strong to start, but they couldn't adapt it. And
Yeah.
that potentially the loss of Newey was the issue, where like if he was the driving force of the concept and it was something that he understood but maybe others didn't, and I don't know what the kind of culture was at Red Bull for car design and iteration, but like maybe if he was the driving factor for it, and especially considering it is said and like almost mythicized about the way that he works, maybe it just put them in a position where they could not adapt that car to the level that others could. And like the reason that I point to Newey as being the issue is this has clearly not been a problem for Red Bull in the last 2 or 3 years. Like
Yes.
they have been iterating at the same level as everyone else. There has not been a point in these new regulations where it feels like they have taken either a step back or people have leapfrogged them. But it happened this year. Now that's too much of a coincidence for me.
I think so too. Yeah, and it's also like if you look at how much faster the cars have gotten, right? So like, every sort of set of regulations, everyone starts at zero, and then, the first year they get a little bit faster, and the next year. But usually like once you get, 2, 3, 4 years into a set of regulations, everyone's got it figured out, right? Unless,
Yep.
there's some crazy like Mercedes DAS or something, like it's generally pretty stable. But the
R.I.P.
cars have
Das.
gotten
Like they tried.
yeah.
They tried.
But the cars have gotten a lot faster. I know Pirelli was talking about how like the cars are significantly faster than they thought, and they were kind of having to rethink like some of the tire compounds because like, oh, you're suddenly a second and a half faster than you were last year at the track. So it's one of those things where like F1's constantly moving so fast, and if
Hmm.
you're standing still, you are flying backwards.
Yeah, and obviously the biggest surprise was McLaren. Like McLaren,
Yeah,
and I would say to a degree Ferrari, but mostly McLaren's. I don't know where they got it from. Really, it's very impressive what they were able to do. I mean, the folks at the factory there clearly worked something out. Because there was some like Toto said, if it isn't going to be us, I want it to be someone with our engine
of course.
because
Yeah.
it proves that we can get there. And like thinking about that kind of like zooming out from there, the difference between the McLaren and Mercedes was quite stark for all of the season, and especially in that latter half. It shows that there was something about that McLaren concept, whatever it was, that was very good, or that they are just picking things up from every part, right? Like
Yeah.
0.5% of difference here and there and here and there. That like they've really clearly built a team around their drivers. They understand how to make it work. Because again, it's not like the Red Bull situation. Oscar and Lando were very comparable.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
some, there was some races better than others, like da 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 da. But it's not like the Red Bull where it was very clear this year that Max was significantly outdriving that car, which was not. I don't think until this year the way that we thought it was. It was just like the car is good and Max is just incredible. I think it's
Yeah.
become a bit clearer this year that the car was okay to good, or in some instances, maybe the Red Bull this year has been bad, but Max is still able to significantly outperform what that Red Bull was maybe capable of doing. I don't know, but like the delta between Checo and Verstappen this year is incredible, like just
Yeah.
huge. Where McLaren didn't have that, Ferrari didn't have that, Mercedes didn't have that, and that's how we end up with the constructors championship being the way that it is too.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, it's such a trope where, the team was like, we're rebuilding. We can't wait for our new wind tunnel to come online. We can't wait for our factory. Like, it feels like most of the time when we hear these are excuses. These are like, oh, this is why we're going to be competitive in 2 years, 3 years. And, McLaren, to be clear, had very much been talking about that. They went through many years in the wilderness, in the late 2010s and even in the early 2020s, especially, I mean, let's not forget, beginning of 2023, they were last in the constructors
Yeah,
after a couple of races.
yeah.
But what we've seen here is that it was all the pieces that have come together, where they did have that new wind tunnel. They do have those new, simulator, and all this big expensive infrastructure stuff that took them years and years
And
to
the
put
new
together.
leadership at from
Exactly. Yeah,
principal.
yeah. It's like essentially this is what it looks like when a team is essentially firing on all cylinders. There's not a weak point that you can really look at with McLaren. I mean, back in the day, you'd be like, oh, they don't have a works engine, blah, blah, blah. But like, not only is the Mercedes power unit clearly one of, if not the very best, super, super tight, but also it doesn't matter as much as it used to, where it's not like, you think back to the old days in like the 90s or whatever, where, Ferrari would be, running their V10, and then the customer Ferrari would be down like 50 or 100 horsepower, right? Like, oh yeah, we'll give you like last year's engine, and we'll
Yeah.
detune it, all yada, yada. It's like, there's no real difference between the individual power units. So it's like, as long as you're not stuck with, maybe the Renault power unit or something. Like pretty much everyone has gotten very sort of even power. So it's really about, hey, as a team, how do you design the chassis? How do you put the right sort of infrastructure in place to test that, to make sure that as everyone's moving forward, you're optimizing as much as possible, where you're getting that little half a tenth here, you're getting a point 0.5 there, but all those things in sort of accumulation add up. Because you look
Yep.
at some teams who have, like Aston Martin's a great example. They've thrown a lot of upgrades at their car in 2024. We're still 2024. And a lot of it hasn't actually worked. They've actually had to go back to like revert to previous specs. Even happened, I believe Ferrari had an update at some point in the year that they had to actually sort of work backwards. And what we've seen is that McLaren have not done that. Every upgrade, or at least from the outside, every upgrade they put on the car has added performance, and they've built and built and built. And that to me just shows a team with a very deep level of understanding from a technical perspective of, hey, if we put this thing on the car, we know that the results we're seeing in the simulator, or the results we're seeing in the wind tunnel, the CFD, all this kind of stuff, it is actually correlating to the real world. And you look at a team like Mercedes, who, they're coming into the season like, oh, we got crazy downforce, it's all great, and they get on and the cars bounce around like a pogo stick, and they didn't understand that was going to happen. So it's just, I think it gives a lot of credit to the McLaren team for just executing at a high level across the board.
If you're Lando Norris, you got to be feeling pretty good right now, right? Like, he committed to that team, stuck around,
Yeah.
signed contract extensions when he kind of didn't need to, and maybe it was time
Mm-hmm.
for him to look for somewhere else. But no, he was like, he, for whatever reason, wanted to be there, like, and felt that he could do it. And, like, I mean, what he said, and, it's hard not, if you're him, to feel it, of like, next year, he's going for it, right? And
Yeah.
if they, if status quo can be somewhat maintained, which, especially when the season starts, is probably pretty likely, he could start off up in the top. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be number one, but he's going to start the season next year, in theory, in most likelihood, up in the top three. I mean,
Yeah.
if he
I think so.
starts at that point, and if McLaren can continue to deliver, I mean, the second half of that season, if that was the full season, he probably would have been the driver's champion, right? Because he was just like
I think he
being
scored
pretty
more, yeah.
consistent. Like,
Yeah.
and at least if you imagine that over a full season, maybe he would get hungrier and hungrier. Because clearly, I think it was clear, he is, I feel, really improved this season.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that.
Like, because there was a lot of criticism for him that he was like not being aggressive enough, that he was letting Max walk all over him. And kind of towards the end of the season, that was not happening anymore. Like, they were,
Yeah.
or at least not as much. Like, it
Yeah.
seemed more like he was, no, I'm gonna do this. And similar, there was that thing of like, he never leads the first lap. and all this kind of criticism that was being lobbed at him. But I think by the end of the season, he has shown, in my estimation at least, I've kind of felt this way about Lando for a long time, but I see a driver championship in him. Like, it seems very clear now, and I think it's all about now, can McLaren give him the tools that he needs from the beginning of the season? Because I think if they do, we are in, I mean, for many reasons next year, we are in for maybe a 2021 level of season.
Careful what you wish for, my friend.
No, I want it. I want it.
I feel like we hung out in person actually just very recently.
Yep.
I know we were talking about this. I hate to overhype it, and obviously I know that it's always fun to like. I think it's just such an easy way. Like, I think part of the reason why this season was actually quite good was that we all expected it to be terrible and completely run by Red Bull, and it was a really pleasant surprise when it became an incredibly competitive season where we had 4 teams who were not just fighting for podiums, fighting for wins and on a regular basis.
Yep.
I don't think it's going to be as wide open next year. I think that 1 or 2 teams are probably going to pull away from the others. I think if it is super, super competitive, that would be amazing. But like, my expectation is it's probably going to be like a McLaren and a Ferrari sort of trying to, putting some distance out front, or, whatever the actual sort of result is. But I just think it's incredibly exciting to see how many winners we had. And also it's going to be really exciting to see with how many rookies we have.
Well, this is
into
it.
Next year.
I think part of what will make next year good is not the same reason that 21 was so good. Like, 21 was so good because it was just like gripping the entire season, right? Who's going to win? I mean, we won't get into how that ended. But like, I think next year there was just what made the beginning half of this season so good was the drama. There was lots of drama where the racing felt like it was a foregone conclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was all of these pieces are moving around to what I think makes 25. The beginning of 25, no one knows what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton and a Ferrari. There's like 4 rookies, one of them in Mercedes, right? Like, it's gonna, and like, as we sit right now, who knows who's going to be in that Red Bull seat, right? Like, there are still things at play, and like, even a lot of the movement. Like, what is Carlos going to be like at a Williams, right? Like, it seems like he did pretty well in the postseason test days, for whatever that might mean. There's just so much stuff that leads to an exciting or interesting beginning of 25. And then if we also get a legit championship battle throughout the season, oh boy, that's like as good as you could hope for, I think. And I mean, I'm just really excited. I'm very excited for 25. Like, in a way that I was not excited for 24 at the end of the 23 season. Like, it was the end of the 23 season, I was ready for it to be over. And I was like, I'm good. I'm happy we're having a break now for a couple of months before we start again. But now I'm like, I want it. I want it. Like, it's going to be, sitting here right now, there's just so many interesting things that are bubbling that next year could just be absolutely wild.
Absolutely, man. It's been a good year. I feel like if you're a fan of Formula One, whether you've watched for a month, a year, 10 years, I think most people can agree it was just an entertaining season. There's a lot of ups and downs, and I think it's easy that when you see the dominance that we've seen over the last couple of years from Red Bull, now that it gets boring, but like, you have to focus on different things, right?
Yes.
When the race winner is essentially a foregone conclusion every weekend, it's like, oh, who's going to get the podium spot? Who's going to try to get the last couple of points to be 7th in the constructor, which I think is still fun.
Yes.
But it's a lot more fun when it is essentially wide open and you absolutely have no idea who is going to be fast week after week. And when the race winner is essentially a complete like sort of toss up every time, it just it makes it so much more exciting and it's so much more engaging to watch. And I feel like, as much as maybe it's going to be a little difficult to synthesize, I think the Drive to Survive will actually be good this year. If it's not, they got plenty of footage. They got plenty of options to make.
If Drive to Survive isn't good this year, Netflix should just cancel the show because they are clearly incapable, right? Like, if you cannot, surely, I mean, if they haven't, they've got to do more episodes. Like, there's so many threads to pull on.
Well, there's going to be a Danny Rick episode. We know that. There's no question.
They're doing an entire Danny Rick spin-off season. But like the Lewis stuff. Yeah. Right? That on its own is like 2 episodes. And then you come down to like all of the teams. Like there's going to be a great episode about Williams. Oh, poor Williams, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so many big and interesting threads to pull on. It does depend on what they've got, right? Like I don't know. They're not going to touch the Red Bull stuff, right?
I don't think they are. I
Yeah.
feel like for a lot of reasons they're probably not.
I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, and also some of the stuff that would be interesting to talk about, like say Adrian Newey, he's not going to do that. I can't imagine him being a part of the show. So
I mean, I'd like to see it.
So would
But
I.
yeah,
I mean,
I
I
agree.
would love to see it, but I don't imagine it. But yeah, there is a lot of really interesting stuff. But talking about interesting stuff, I just want to let our listeners know in case they didn't. You interviewed Lando Norris.
Yes.
It
Yeah,
was
it was
so
a good
good.
year.
But
Yeah.
you asked him the question.
I asked him the question. Okay, so the way it worked.
I screamed. I screamed when you sent me the video when you got to it. I could not believe it.
So, longtime listeners will know that Mike and I have had a running bet for quite literally years now on whether or not it is possible for one of us to hop into an F1 car and drive it. And I've been incredibly fortunate. Earlier this year, we had the opportunity to talk with David Coulthard, who was very gracious in answering a question of would it be possible to hop in the car? And I think it's pretty safe to say that he was pretty enthusiastic. Like, yeah, you could do it. It's just a car, right? That was a good way to describe the way he said it.
Yeah, I would say compared to Lando, Coulthard was a little bit more reticent. Like Lando was just kind of like, all right, sure,
Well,
no problem.
I think DC was ready for it, right? Like I think like he like kind of like thought about for a second and he kind of like thought it through. I asked Lando the same question, and Lando, it was like we actually cut it down a little bit. Lando probably took like 20 seconds to just think about it. He's like,
I see. In the edit. Okay. See, because with Coulthard, I was there. To see the hesitancy on his face. But with Lando, you're like, you're cutting it up. Like he was like, just saying, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think you can. And you just cut out, yeah, and just leave it at that.
No, I cut that. Yeah. No, he was like, yeah, I think so. Cause like my question was really simple. It's like, I don't need to go and run a 2-minute lap at Coda or something. I just like, could I get in the car, get it out of the garage or get it out of the paddock area? And could I just do a lap even if I'm just cruising? And it's like, yeah, you could just leave it in first gear. You could do it. It'd be fine. There's no anti-stall. His main thing was like, there's no ABS. There's no traction control. I'm like, that's fine. That's no big deal. I feel like, Mike, this is 2. It's 2 for 2. I feel like I am putting it out into the world. In fact, actually, I didn't tell you this. Yesterday, I was at Qualcomm's headquarters in San Diego. I was doing a little thing there, and they had Lewis's car from last year in the lobby. And I was looking at it, and I was looking around
Is
like,
there any fuel in this?
I was like, yeah. I was like, would anyone bother? I mean, I know they have a bunch of signs saying don't touch and everything, but like, I'll be back real fast. Like, I'll quick little lap.
Look, the original bet of this is I say you can't even move it.
I can move it.
No,
I can move it.
I still don't think you can.
I think so.
I
Dude,
think you'll lose the clutch.
Lando said there's anti-stall. I trust Lando. When was the last time you saw an F1 driver stall a car? Doesn't happen because
last
anti-stall.
weekend.
What? Oh,
Yuki did it.
Okay, you know what? That's fair.
He couldn't get it off the line. Everyone goes past him.
Okay, you know what? But that was a mechanical error. If the car is broken, there's no amount of driving skill
in this scenario, you are the mechanical error. By the way, like that's what I'm betting on. Look, all I'm saying is
this.
It's looking good for you based on what people are telling you. However, these people are very well media trained, and maybe they're just being nice.
Here's the thing. I'm putting it out into the world real hard right now. That if you or anyone you know has the keys to an F1 car and would let your boy Austin and Mike hop in for a quick spin, I'm just saying. Okay, fine. I volunteer. Look, I have experience. I have a long CV of just incredible racing feats, mostly video games. But I think I can do it. I'm just gonna keep putting it out there. 2024 was a good year for us getting real close to a lot of F1 action. I feel like 2025 is the year, Mike. I'm gonna get in the car next year. I feel like I'm just gonna put it out in the universe, and hopefully, I come back in a car of any kind. I literally take anything. I'll take an F2 car. I'll take an F3 car. I just want to do it.
We'll see.
But ideally F1.
Before we box and stop, I just have a piece of news that I wanted to mention real quick because it's interesting, very interesting. you can raise the flag in 2026 as another American team joins the grid. You can
USA,
USA,
USA. Nebulously,
GM.
I think maybe.
Is it GM or Cadillac? Do we know like what the team name is going to be? It was because they keep calling it GM Cadillac, but they're probably going
I
to call it Cadillac, right?
think it's Cadillac. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because I don't think GM really puts. Obviously, GM is the owner of a number of brands, including like Chevrolet, Cadillac, GMC, Buick, you name it. I don't think they usually put GM as a very forward-facing brand. It's almost always Cadillac or
Yeah.
Chevy or whatever the case is. Yeah, I believe it'll be Cadillac. The whole Andretti thing is sort of just still floating around. I still see like I think technically the name of the company who got approved was like Andretti something something. It just the whole thing seems very weird and a little bit nebulous. But yeah, it should be the Cadillac Formula One team. Ad sponsors here, here, here.
Well,
Visa,
from
Cash App,
what I
whatever.
saw, like the Andretti name is not involved because the Andretti Global, I think, they got like kind of
Yes.
merged and acquired by like a
Yep.
basically the same company, but just as a way to push the
Yeah.
Andretti's out, it seems like, and that was how this ended up happening. It's a bunch of stuff. Like it doesn't really matter. The details there are not important, I don't think. But what is important is a new team joining the grid and
Yeah.
a new team that's very serious, right? Like
Yeah.
26, they're coming in and they're taking a Ferrari
Ferrari. Yes.
engine with the
Theoretically,
idea for 28 to have their
yeah.
own, which is
Yes.
wild as a thing to like from zero, right? Because this isn't like Audi, right?
Yeah.
Where Audi is coming in and acquiring an established team, right? There is
Yes.
at least processes, practices, and experience in place. In 2026, 1 year from now, Cadillac are putting a car on the grid. Two cars. That
Yeah.
is incredible. Like I did some research on this because my first kind of thought was, how on earth do you build a car in a year? Like how do you go from approval to having a car on the grid? And what I was kind of looking around and finding out that they have been working since like 2023
Yeah.
on establishing a small team and facilities. Because as soon as you decide you want to be a Formula One team, that is the day in which you need to start building a Formula One car, even though
Yes.
no one's letting you do it yet because it's so incredibly complicated. You have to get there. So they have facilities. And obviously as well, like Cadillac racing exists in other places, so they could draw some information, some expertise, at least around racing and like thinking about racing from the overall group. But yeah, now they're like hiring big time and they're going for it. And I think it's great. I think it's great.
Yeah.
If anything, what I'm happy about is it puts two more drivers on the grid. Like two more
Absolutely.
people get to do this, which I think is fantastic because we lose too many drivers that are good. And
Yeah.
this gives them spots, right? There's more spots. I
I
want to
agree.
see
I think it's
more teams than this. Even I
yeah.
don't. For me, I have no feeling on why it should be capped to any specific number. Right? Let's go more teams.
I think the big there is a number in the regulations, mostly because I think that most tracks are only designed for like there's only so much space. I think the number though is it's 12 or 14 or 13. It's a there's theoretically room for a couple more teams. I think
Which
in
is great.
practical terms, yeah, there's going to be a cap in which certain tracks just aren't going to have the space or what have you, or you're just not going to have the actual sort of just pit lane
Couldn't
that
put
would
them on the
support it.
grid. Even
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah,
the grids are built in a certain way.
yeah, and to be fair, you look at how long and arduous a journey Cadillac had to take to go from being denied, approved, and denied, approved, come back next year, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's difficult for me to imagine anyone else going through that who has the clout. I mean, I know that there's always sort of rumors about like maybe like Hyundai trying to join the grid. Clearly, we've seen Toyota taking a technical partnership with Haas and
A lot of
essentially
people
becoming a
say that
sponsor.
that could be maybe they want to
Yeah,
come back, and this is
yeah,
the
and
start of doing that. But
that would be, if they were interested in it, a much easier thing. But that's not a new team. That would be Toyota just absorbing Haas or a Hyundai either, trying to buy, RB or whatever the case is. Like, I would assume that the overall number of teams is probably not going to go above 11. Maybe it could go to 12, but I just think that it was such a colossal pain to get one brand new team on the grid. I can't imagine almost anyone else having
no,
the money and the fortitude to try to like push that through.
I respect
I'd love
it.
to see it.
I respect it.
Absolutely.
Like, it probably would have been easier to just buy Haas,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think so.
probably cheaper too. Like, it probably would have been easier and
Yeah.
cheaper to just
How
buy a team than to.
how competitive can they possibly be? I just have such low
Well,
expectations for a brand new team.
the thing that I found interesting is I was watching a video, I think, from the race talking about it. And they were saying the one benefit that they have is they are unbound by regulations in car development. They can
Yeah.
spend as much money as they want, and they can spend as much time in the wind tunnel as they like. That is the benefit that you get because they will not be bound by the agreements until the 26 season begins. So
Yeah.
they have that advantage. But I cannot imagine they are anything but lost. And that has to be your assumption. And
Yep.
you go into it knowing that. I mean, I think one of the good things about Formula One now and why I think it can support new teams is the cost cap. The cost
That's
cap
true.
gives you an idea of how much money you realistically need. Now, it's not all the money, right? Like there is additional money that you would want for facilities, and because there are things that don't exist within the cost cap. But just in the idea of like running a team and how much sponsorship do you need, like it's very feasible. And obviously, right now, it's very easy, quote unquote, easy for teams to get enough money. Like I was telling you, I was watching an interview with James Vowles on F1 TV a few weeks ago. And they were talking about all of the crashes that they were having, and somebody said to him, like, is this? Do you have the money for this? He's like, oh, we're over the cost cap. Like even Williams, right? Like which one of the lower teams on the grid, because there's just so much. I mean, just you see that Santander have moved to them. Now that's a huge sponsor, massive sponsor that's moved to Williams. Like there is enough money in the sport right now, there's enough interest in the sport right now that any team, I'm assuming, can get the money they need for the cost cap. So I guess that adds a little bit of like reliability into making this investment. But yeah, I don't understand how you do it, and I'm going to be fascinated. I mean, and also, who are they going to put in the car? I mean, obviously they have a while to think about that, but that's going to be really interesting. My assumption is they will try everything they can to get 2 Americans, but that's going to be really complicated.
If it was me, I would probably put like one American in, and then I would get someone who's more experienced, a Valtteri or even like a Magnussen or something. That would be my gut on it, just because you want someone who has some deep level of F1 experience. Like you can't have an entire. I mean, it's not like it's impossible. I mean, we saw like Red Bull do it, 20 years ago, where they kind of came in very fresh, very much like, hey, we're gonna do things differently. I don't have a good read for what Cadillac is gonna do with this. I don't get this vision that they're going to come in and absolutely just turn tables over and just do something crazy. Like it feels like they've kept such a low key profile, probably because they were trying to get approved and they didn't want to talk a lot about it. But like it just at this point, I don't have a good read for what their ambition is. It's not like that, like normally, it seems like, oh, we're going to get here's a 3-year plan to get our first podium and da. Like Cadillac's just like, yeah, we're here. Here's a press conference. Like that's it. Like there's nothing really to go on. So I'm excited, but yeah, I assume that as
Cadillac
we
is
get into
coming.
next year, and getting closer to the actual launch, they're going to start drumming up hype. But if I was them, I also understand why you wouldn't go too crazy. Like low key, quiet, no expectations of anything besides last place. That's a good way. So if you're able to do anything above that, you're an overachiever versus you come in all bombastically and then, everyone laughs at you when you're 3 seconds off the pace and getting lapped on like 10 laps in or whatever. I think it's probably a smart move to be a little bit quiet, but I just have no sense for like what their ambition is, what their sort of targets, goals, any of that.
Absolutely not possible at all, but just as a thought exercise, could it be funny? Imagine if they won the first race. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? The sport would burn to the ground, right? They just come in and they're like 10 seconds ahead of everybody else.
It'd be hilarious. Like they come in for the first inspection, they pop it open, and they realize they put like a Corvette V8 in the back. Like
there's a jet engine in the back of the car. But like, wouldn't it just be like? Can you imagine? Oh, the emergency podcasts up and down the world. But like, or even just like maybe even more than a win would be if they got pole in qualifying, right?
Oh
like
my God.
what that would
can't imagine
do. Like absolutely impossible. But just as how fun would that be if that happened? Brand new team and they're just
Yeah.
blazing.
Hey, you know what? I mean, imagine a scenario in which Ferrari have an incredibly strong power unit. That would be a huge help. Imagine a scenario in which, yeah, they've maybe discovered something about the regs. I mean, it is going to be the like if you're going to come in, you do want to come in at the beginning of the regulations because everyone's building this type of car for the first time. Not to discount the fact that all these teams have decades of experience in just building cars in general, but like it is totally possible that one team, Cadillac or elsewhere, has the magic
Yep.
secret
And
sauce
they are
to
from
sort of figure it
now.
out.
They're unburdened. All the other
Yeah.
teams are thinking about 25 and 26. They're all in on
Yes.
26.
Yes.
That's all they
Yep.
need to do. And so I think I saw something like the regs have been adjusted again. Like there's been
Mm.
some adjustments because some of the teams were unhappy with some of the ways that the car was going to go. And we've spoken about it already. Like that new car design and the active aero is going to be really weird and it's going to be disastrous in some place. Like that is going to break. Like in the first season, that is going to
Yeah.
break. Like everyone's going to be having problems with that because it's a complicated system and it's going to be really interesting. And we don't know what it's going to do. And you're right. Like they got a clean slate. Everybody's got a clean slate. They might end up hiring someone who really kind of just like gets it and they come out of a car and they get in the points in the first race. It's not impossible to
I
do
mean,
that.
isn't that what Haas did? Didn't Haas score
I
points
think
in their
so.
very first race?
I
Yeah,
think so,
yeah.
yeah.
It's super, and actually a lot of parallels there because Haas is also a Ferrari customer team. Yada yada yada. Like you never
Maybe
know,
a little
right?
bit
You
more
never
investment
know.
than us, though. Maybe they got a little bit more money.
You know what?
Not just in the part
Fair.
spin or whatever. All right, should we take a break?
Let's do it.
All right, you
You
going to
ready?
time me for the final time of the season?
All right. Last stop in 3, 2, 1, go.
This episode of the Backmarkers is brought to you by The Racing Line, your personalized motorsport calendar app, covering over 100 series from around the world of up-to-date times and dates for all sessions. All major series are covered: Formula 1, 2, and 3, Formula 1 Academy, IndyCar, MotoGP, NASCAR, Formula E, World Endurance Championship, WeatherTech Series, European Le Mans. If it has wheels and an engine, it's in the Racing Line. You can build your own motorsport calendar by selecting the series and sessions you want to see. Every session is converted to your local time, so you don't have to spend mornings on time zone conversion websites working out what time things are starting for you. The race information can be surfaced on the home screen and in lock screen widgets. You don't even need to open the app. Custom notifications alert you to the session before it begins. You can have up to 2 notifications per session, and you can have these at any time you want. 15 minutes before, an hour before, a day, 2 days, 4 hours, 3 minutes, whatever works for you. This is what I love about the Racing Line. I have like an hour and a 10-minute notification thing, so I know exactly when the race is going to come, and I love that because I can also get different notifications for the different things that I want, and I love that I can see all the sessions, and it's very customizable. The Racing Line also includes streaming details for all series. The app links out to the sites that are streaming them and marks whether they're paid or geo-blocked. There's a ton of motorsport that's free on the web, and the Racing Line can help you discover it. This app was built by a single indie developer who took up iOS development after listening to shows here on Relay FM and our friends over at the Accidental Tech podcast. It's designed by a motorsport fanatic for motorsport fanatics and is available for iOS, iPadOS, macOS, and watchOS. You can find out on your watch the time of the race, which just makes sense. Relay listeners can get 3 months free and 70% off the lifetime of your subscription using the code BACKMARKERS to keep your subscription at the reduced rate for as long as your subscription is active. That is the code BACKMARKERS for 3 months free and 70% off the lifetime of your subscription. A thanks to the Racing Line for their support of this show and Relay.
202, my friend. 202.79.
That was not a good time. I think I got too
You know what?
excited about it.
I think it's really exciting. I think it's really fun to be able to You know what? You just should have set a timer for 1 minute into the ad read. And I think that would probably have fixed it, right? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
I
so.
think so. You just your live activity wasn't running. I think that was probably it happens. It happens.
It happens to all of us. Should we take a look at the driver standards?
Let's
Have
do
a little
it.
look, because I've not really gone very deep on it. Like I've just kind of like glanced at it.
Yeah.
Let's start with drivers. So obviously at top, Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Piastri. That's great for Oscar, right? Top 5.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good season for Oscar. I think like on the whole of it, Lando was the stronger driver, but it wasn't by a lot. And I think that he does need to probably work on some things when it comes to. I mean, really, I think Lando kind of had him in races and in qualifying. by small margins. But the
Also,
small margins
to be
certainly add up,
fair to
right?
Oscar too, he did help Lando out towards the
That is
end of the
true.
season as well.
That is true. That is true.
Although, I, if they could have got that together, if they would
Hmm.
have got that working, Lando could have won. Like if we go back far enough, if they could have got that kind of teamwork kind of established, which they ended up getting, things could have gone a little bit differently. I mean, there's lots of ifs and buts, but I think that's really great for Oscar.
Yeah.
He doesn't ever feel like someone who's satisfied, which is probably a good thing. But I hope that he's happy with it because I think top 5 is great. And then
Yeah.
Carlos as well. I'm super happy that Carlos is 5th because I feel for him, man. I really feel for him. He seems like such a
Yeah.
nice guy, and he is taking what has happened to him so well. Like,
Yes.
and I think that is very admirable. I think he's had nothing but great things to say about Ferrari. Like, I think I have a lot of respect for him, and I would expect this is really raising his stock amongst the team principals of like seeing how much of a team player he has been here. I mean, he is in an impossible situation. Like, aside from Max, I don't think anyone wouldn't be pushed out by Lewis wanting to join your team. Like, I think
Yeah.
every
Yeah, I think
team would
so.
do this. I think maybe only Max Verstappen is like the only person you would not kick out for Lewis Hamilton if he said, "Oh, I want to be on your team." Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you at least would, for the history of it, want to do it, right? Like, it's even that alone, just to get him in your uniform and take pictures of him. It's like, look what we did,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who
Absolutely.
is considered by me and others to be the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
You know, you want that. You want to be a part of that history as a team. George Russell, then Lewis. I don't really know what to say about that, but
Yeah, I mean, I think this actually flatters Lewis a little bit because there was that one race that Lewis technically won, but it was really George won and I think was disqualified. I think with that, George would have been a little bit farther up.
yeah,
I think it was a good season for George. I think it was a season he needed to really show that he can sort of
be
be the
number
number
one.
one at the team.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's tough. I think next year will put this year for Lewis in a lot more context of was this his heart wasn't in it, the car was difficult, he's checked out, or is it maybe something that's a little bit deeper? I think only next year will really tell us the answer to that.
I
Um,
mean,
but
I think some of the drives he has had this year proves that he's still got it. Like, just what we
I
saw
think so
from
as
him
well.
last weekend
Yeah,
he was killing it.
yeah,
But I think he knew he wanted to leave for good reason for him.
yep,
And I think he was hoping for just one good season out of it, and he didn't get it. And I think he was just done. Like, he was
yeah,
done, right? It's like
yeah.
you've quit your job and you've got to do your handover and you can't be bothered, but you're going to do it like, that's kind of where he
Yes.
was. And I do hope that he has a kind of renewed vigor with Ferrari next season. I'm telling you, man, that partnership between Leclerc and Ferrari lasts 3 races.
Yeah.
It's gonna be spicy between the two of
Yeah,
them because they
I
both
agree.
have something huge to prove. Like,
Yeah.
there aren't many teams where it's like, I'm lead driver. No, I'm lead driver. You know what I mean? Like, and they're going to be in that, right? Because Leclerc's going to be like, you're coming into my house. And
Mhm.
and Lewis will be like, no, every house is my house. So it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
Sergio Perez at number 9. Rough.
Number 8.
Sorry, number 8. Still
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah. I
Uh,
don't. That's. Ugh.
I will also say, though, Fernando Alonso, number 9, very rough. Like, if you think of them in 23,
Yeah.
and it looked like, beginning of 23, wow, Aston's going to win the championship. No, it went bad, and it got worse and worse, and I feel for him.
Yeah.
Pierre Gasly at number 10. Did you see the stat that he caused $0 of damage this year? Isn't that
Zero.
incredible?
That's a wild stat, especially because this is a long season. It was 24 races.
And he did not
And
damage his car at all. Incredible. Well, at least
That's
in
crazy.
a way that it costs money. Like,
Sure, yeah, like wear and tear,
Yeah.
but like no one could have done less. Super impressive. Honestly, Pierre had a good year, especially toward the end where
he did.
Esteban was nowhere, right?
He was putting
and
it in.
Pierre,
Yep.
he was absolutely like he was a threat. Q3, top 5 sometime. Like he was really, really up there. So we'll see what next year looks like. But it's a good way to go out of the year on a massive upswing
Mm.
than the other way around.
Nico Hulkenberg in at 11. Great result for Nico. Also a very
Yep,
strong season for Nico Hulkenberg. He was up
absolutely.
there a lot, especially in qualifying. Very good at
Yep.
qualifying this year. Yuki Tsunoda at number 12. Okay.
Yuki's doing Yuki things. I
It
think he did
seems like
perfectly well.
that V carb was not very good.
No,
It
it
seems like
wasn't.
the car was not very good, and so I don't know how representative that is of his overall performance. Otherwise,
I mean, he beat everybody he was in the same team with
yeah,
this year. So,
yeah,
well, I
of
think
which
we
there were
can.
many people, which we'll get to. Lance Stroll at number 13, Esteban Ocon in at number 14. No matter what I do, I cannot ever remember the fact that Ocon is going to Haas.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
It does
Yeah.
not stick in my brain. I don't know why, but I cannot get my head around that one.
Yeah.
Kevin Magnussen at 15. Gonna miss Kevin, I think. He's been a
Yeah.
very interesting guy in the car this year. Alex Albon at 16. Feeling for Alex. Oh boy, we'll talk about that in a minute. Daniel Ricciardo, which seems like
Aw.
100 years ago that he was racing.
Yup.
In at number 17. Ollie Behrman behind him at number 18. Colapinto, is it Franco Colapinto in at number 19? Zhou Guan Yu at 20. Liam Lawson at 21. This is so funny that it just keeps
A
going.
lot of drivers on this
Liam
list.
Lawson at 21. And then 3 drivers with 0 points. At number 22, Valtteri Bottas. Number 23, Logan Sargent, who we can even remember. Number 24, Jack Doohan. Bottas, man, not a way to
terrible.
finish, right? Like,
No.
not a good end. Feel for him. Very bad. Not great.
It's like he bought in to the vision of what Audi would be. He would be the safe pair of hands to get them there. And the team has gone absolutely backwards. And he's been booted out before he even had the opportunity to reap the time and investment he had put in. I mean, I don't think there's any way that you could look. And like, with all of that even being said, I think he's so unlucky to not have a seat for next year, right? I think if there was not a million rookies coming onto the scene for next year, there's no scenario in which Valtteri Bottas should be out of F1. That feels. Is he the best driver? No, but is he better than a lot of the other names that you just listed? Absolutely. And the fact that he has no drive for next year, my only hope is he's got a drive for Cadillac, and he can spend next year, being a reserve driver for, it was Ferrari or Mercedes or whatever.
Mercedes is the rumor, but I do think
Yeah.
a lot of that might actually be wishful thinking. I
think so
think
too.
a lot of people that are saying that are hoping that. I don't know if you follow him on social media, but he's very focused on teasing that he's up to something. And I guess
he
it's up
should-
to us to find out what.
If you're Cadillac, excuse me, if you're Cadillac,
He's getting emotional.
bring him in, have him. Yeah, I know it's sad. It's sad. if you're Cadillac, you should bring Valtteri in. Have him be there to do simulator runs to help set up the team. Just sort of give him a year, admittedly out of racing, but that seems like it's going to be pretty much the case no matter what. But he can really focus on being ready for 2026. He can impart all the wisdom he has from Sauber and mostly Mercedes over the years and how processes are done and sort of what to be looking for, everything. Like that feels like a perfect stepping off point for him to get into that team. I hope it's the case. If we see him just completely sort of bounce out of the sport, I think that would be incredibly sad.
Yeah, I agree. All right, going over to the constructors. McLaren, they had 666 points, which is pretty metal. That's sweet. Triple six. Love it. Ferrari at 652. Very good good
close.
result from Ferrari this year, I
Yeah.
think. I wanted McLaren to take this. It really felt like they deserved it, and I'm very happy that they did it. Ferrari tried their best, though. They absolutely did.
They didn't know, and like, I don't think most people were expecting Ferrari to actually come really close for the championship.
Right,
I feel like
it was conceivable in the last race, and like not
It
even
was,
in one of
yeah.
those like super weird ways. Like,
yeah,
and also it got real close, right? Like
it did.
something happened to Lando's car, and they lost it.
It
And
was
so
over. 14 points.
yeah, and so really came down to the wire, which I was happy about. I was happy that it came down to the wire. Incredibly,
Yeah.
by the way, that race happened while I was flying home from California.
Yeah.
Didn't watch it. Stayed spoiler free for like
Ooh.
9 hours after the race ended, and then watched a catch up of it, watched the whole thing. So I was able to
That's
have the experience and somehow remain spoiler free for that entire time. I was very happy about that.
That's truly impressive. It's always scary when you're traveling at
Mm-hmm.
the 3 a.m. or whatever it is for wherever the local race is.
Yeah.
Good job, Mike. Good job.
Then we've got Red Bull at number 3.
Yep.
They got 589 points.
They went
And
wildly off.
437 of those were Max Verstappen.
Oh, oh wow! I don't
That's
think I actually
so bad.
internalized that was the number. Wow.
Yeah.
Well then, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Then Mercedes at 4th with 468. And then it is incredible that Aston Martin then has 94 points. Like the amount of points accumulated in those top 4 teams is immense. Like I know it always happens this way, but it really is wild to see it that way.
Yeah.
Then Alpine at 6th, Haas at 7th. Good for them.
Yeah.
VCarb at 8th, Williams at 9, and then Sauber at 4.
Yeah, 10th place. I mean, that makes sense. It was a year where the top 4 were in their own league.
Yeah.
There was actually a pretty good, like, the Group B sort of fight between RB. It really was RB and Haas for the most part. And then Alpine kind of came out of nowhere, really, with not only their sort of performance at the end, but also that double podium, which absolutely hauled them all the way up into contention. It was good. I feel like again, we just kind of look at this season from a historical context. It was a good season. There's a lot of stuff happening. It was so unpredictable. And it was the goodbye season for Lewis. It's the goodbye season, honestly, for a lot of the drivers on the grid who are, just moving on. It was the year of the rookie in a lot of ways, where I think we've seen some performances from some of the rookies that have made a lot of teams reevaluate what their driver lineup is and how young and how inexperienced it actually should be for the futures, to see sort of if you can pluck a kid out of F2 and suddenly he's immediately up to speed. I think that sort of opened a lot of eyes. So I think all of this is really setting up for what hopefully is a spectacular 2025, although we're going to keep our expectations low and we expect it to be boring.
No.
I'm just going to be like, it'll be like an okay season. Okay, well.
I will say about like the Lewis leaving part, I think it is, as much as I love Lewis Hamilton, and I'm a big fan, I think it is kind of ridiculous to give him a space at Parc Fermé.
I said, yes.
He's not retiring.
Yeah.
Like they did that for Seb when he retired.
Yes.
It was similar. They did it for Zhou Guanyu in China. It's like, what, because he's there? Like, I don't... no, I thought that was silly. Like, you can have him do something, but like... And doing donuts? Again, he's not retired. He's just going to another team. That didn't make any sense to me. That felt really weird. It's like, you wouldn't do this for any other driver. That didn't sit right. It was like... I like to see this because I care about him and I think this is amazing, but he didn't need to be with the winners and or the champions, right?
Yeah,
and I found that to be very strange.
Yep.
If he wanted to be there, he had to work harder, right? He had to get third. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very peculiar decision because it sets a strange precedent to me. Like,
I agree. I saw it and I was like, ooh, I mean, good for him. It's always like nice to see someone do donuts, but it was just like, he's fine.
Very weird.
He'll be just in a different overall set next year. Like it's all good.
I know it is like I understand, right? It's like the most dominant partnership in history. Like I get all of that. Like it deserves to be celebrated.
Yes.
I just don't think in a way that it should be that they reserve for champions or people retiring. Like that's what that should be reserved for.
How many people are actually that was their final race? They didn't get that moment.
Exactly.
Lewis is changing team, and he gets the moment. Yeah, I agree. It was a
Valtteri
little weird.
is gone, and he got nothing. Nothing. Like and so like I just find that to be a weird move. It's like it was quite peculiar. Before we finish, let's wrap up with reviewing our predictions. So we made two separate sets of predictions this year. I'll start with our summer break predictions. So we were predicting who would be Drivers' Champion and Constructors' Champion. Very boringly, we both predicted the same, and we both got it correct. We both predicted Max as driver, McLaren as constructor. That felt cool to get that one right.
Yeah.
Let's do our 2024 predictions. You want to run through yours?
Yes. Okay. So, as a reminder, dear viewers or dear listeners, or however you're enjoying the podcast, we each, right before the beginning of the year, made 3 predictions. Now, these are, I think, the more exciting predictions because we do this with nothing but the rumors and the context of the previous year. So,
Vibes.
I think vibes were strong this year. So, my 3 guesses. First of all, would be actually we should do one at a time, right? Let's do
Okay.
it one at a time. Go back and forth. Okay. So my first prediction was that Lewis Hamilton would win at least one race this year.
That's correct.
Ta-da!
Very correct.
Got it.
Yep.
Feel good about that. In fact, technically two. Technically, but really one.
Really well. Mine was someone other than Max wins one of the first 5 races. Now, when I was looking at these predictions, I was like, I didn't get that one right. And then I went and checked. It's like, I forgot that Carlos Sainz won Australia, which was the 3rd race of the season. So I got that one correct. That felt cool. But I was basing this on, I don't think that Red Bull's going to do it. And at that, I still wasn't correct in that because it did do it. It just didn't do it in the long term. But
yeah, it was like, it was funny. Like your prediction is almost the exact inverse of what would happen, even though you're technically correct. They were really good at the beginning. And then like after race 5 or 6, they were nowhere.
No.
Right? Or maybe not quite that instantly, but yeah,
there
like,
were
they
points where
definitely
they
went
were
downhill.
nowhere. Kind of when you look at it comparatively to where they would normally be. It's basically
Yeah.
What's your second prediction?
VCarb, our favorite team with the best name on the grid, would place 5th or better. I think, like, can we double check? They were 5th, right? In the constructor, we just said
I
that.
don't
they're
think
5th.
so.
Was it
No,
really?
no,
Was
I don't-
5, 6? Oh no, that's 8th. Oh,
Yeah.
I guess I got that one wrong. Uh-oh.
So that's okay. So, well, I'm going to help you out here. The Mercedes, the Mercedes seat will be filled by someone currently on the grid.
Carlos got that seat, right? Right.
I
Carlos is driving for Mercedes
cannot.
next year.
I still cannot believe that they have. I know why they're bringing in Antonelli. I just think they are making a real gamble. Like it's a big gamble, and maybe like I was thinking about this yesterday. Maybe there is something to be said about bring him in 25 and kind of break him in for 26. That's
Yeah,
when it
I think
matters.
so.
Or 28, right? With the hope that either in, between 2020, when 2026 begins with the new regs or 2028 with the new engines, you might be at that point with either of these changes to be able to get him into a place and get a car good enough that maybe he's a world champion material, right? Because that's what they're hoping for. They're looking for the next Max Verstappen. We don't know if they found it. I don't really know enough about him except for the fact that people rate him very highly. I'm very intrigued to see what he does.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting to think about. I believe George is only under contract for one more year,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if they are trying to play a little bit defensively. If George does not stick around, if maybe Red Bull are able to kind of tempt him over to
I
join or
can't
something
imagine
like
that
that.
happening,
Oh, I don't know, man. I feel like George and Max would be a one heck of a combo.
I don't think he'd. I mean,
you don't think so?
right now, the two of them want to murder each other in a dark alley. Right? That is.
That's a little bit of murderous intent.
I'd be
Make it
surprised.
faster.
I'd be surprised. I think that Toto and George are committed for the long term. That would be my feeling. That this has been
didn't
a
he say the exact same thing about
long
Lewis?
partnership. He was there
Like-
for like 10 years. That's
know,
the
but,
long
like,
term.
No one saw Lewis leaving coming.
No.
At least of all Toto, right? And it's like, I wonder about it. But yes, I think it makes sense.
Yes, it
given
could
where
happen.
everything is.
Yes, it could happen. I would be surprised because, like, I just feel like if you're George, you gotta hold on for the reason you joined.
I do agree. I do think
Mercedes
it would make sense. Yeah.
will win a championship
Yeah.
in the next
And-
5 years, in my opinion. Like it's
And you don't.
I don't know. Let me take the number out. Right, Mercedes
Yeah.
will again win the world championship. They will
Of course. Yeah.
because of the quality and the caliber of people that they have.
Yeah.
When is that going to happen? I don't know. But if you're George Russell, if you had the opportunity to stay to 26 and 28 and see what, like with these reg changes, like, I don't know. We'll see, though. We'll see.
Yep.
So, I didn't get my second prediction.
So
What
we're
was your
1 and 1
third and
each?
final? Yep.
All right. This one, I feel like I might have done okay on. Lando wins a race, a sprint or Grand Prix.
Isn't that
Now,
incredible in hindsight to look back at what that prediction really meant? You know,
hey, at the time,
he
Lando had
hadn't done it.
never won a
Yes,
race. He
but
had
like
never done it.
it's wild now, sitting here now and being like, "Oh, he might win. I hope he does. This could be his year." Where he had a sniff at the championship for a bunch of the races.
And specifically, I even padded it with it could be a sprint. Even he's gonna win something, right, y'all?
Yeah.
He's gonna win something. Yeah, I think I maybe got a little bit of an easy gimme on that one. But to be fair, though, it was not clear what McLaren was gonna do going into this year. Like they looked like they were gonna be decent, maybe get some podiums. I don't think most people would have assumed going
No,
into
no,
2024
no. Nobody
they were
thought
anywhere
that.
near as competitive.
Nobody thought that. It was. This was still a prediction that had some risk to it. This was not a
Yeah.
gimme, right? Now, if you made that prediction for next year, I mean, now come on, what are you doing?
Change that. Lando will win 2 races.
Max Verstappen wins a race.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Ooh, we're getting spicy now.
Then my final prediction was that Williams would score more points in 24 than they did in 23. And oh boy, did they not. In 2023, Williams scored 28 points. And in 2024, they scored 17.
Yikes.
Rough. So
I
you
thought
win the year.
I win that, but honestly, I feel like your predictions were kind of better in a lot of ways. Like the
Thank you.
Williams thing, I feel like the momentum seemed like it. But
It
here's the
really
thing,
did.
no one can predict this stuff. It's really fun to try. No one can predict this. No one knows. It's just one of those things where you're lucky. Like it's crazy at how variable the sport can be, which I think is a big reason why we enjoy it. Right?
Yes.
It's not like the same thing over and over again. It's there's just so much sort of just energy with it. There's so much sort of evolution. There's so many egos. There's so much technology. There's so much money. Like it's just there's so many things that all go into it. It was an incredible year, my friend. It was really
was.
really something. We gotta do it bigger next year, 2025. Mike and Austin go to every single race until we are able to borrow a car.
Interesting,
There you
because
go.
that's not where
my
I'm
prediction.
at. So
really?
about the show for next year. So me and my wife recently shared that we're expecting our first child next year.
Congratulations.
She'll be born at the end of February. So it's a terrible time for an F1 related podcast. I'm going to be on an extended parental leave for the beginning of the season. So we will return next year. I don't know when. I do think that we should make predictions that we can keep and we can share them later on. So between the two of us. But the predictions, I feel like we shouldn't make them now. The predictions have to come with the information of the break.
Yes.
And
we
then
will
we
make
make
a
them
point.
before the race
Exactly.
begins. Yeah.
Yes, we will have them all locked in before the first race of the year. And I'm sure we will be accurate. We will be on point. And you, with your newfound fatherhood capabilities, will be able to clearly see. It's just the lack of sleep, I think, will give you like that clearer vision
Interesting.
on what the year is going to be
I
like.
don't think that's how that works.
It
I will
is,
say
yeah,
I'm
no,
happy
it's
because in
super easy.
2023 I got no predictions correct. So I'm happy that I got one correct this time. So
Yep.
this now puts it, by the way, you have won 2 predictions and I have won 1 set of predictions.
Okay. All right. Well, no pressure for next year.
Yep. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back at some point in the 2025 season. Enjoy the beginning and we'll see you then.
Later, friends.